Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm excited today to have a guest with me. His name is Paul Stobbs, and he has this awesome, interesting theory about the Nephilim being clowns. And Paul, I'm excited to have you on here. I want you to kind of explain and tell everybody who's listening a little bit about yourself. But I wanted to share with you, I had this interesting theory about clowns and what kind of brought me to you was I stumbled upon one of your YouTubes and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have this guy on. He sounds so fascinating. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've kind of been
Yeah,
all over the podcast circuit over the past 2 months, and
that's
they're
awesome.
coming in thick and heavy. All these requests, but no, I'm happy to be here and happy to talk with you today.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's good. Yeah, you're popular. And I think that this is something that's really interesting. You see a lot of the clowns kind of just scattered throughout our society, but also with Halloween coming up, I think it's kind of, interesting to talk about. And
Yeah.
um, so let's kind of start out. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of discovered this, how it relates to Genesis 6 and the Nephilim, and give us a little backstory.
Sure. So this kind of goes back to around the 2016 clown sightings. This was the pivotal moment for me,
Oh,
which kind of
yes.
led me to begin going down this train of thought. I mean, prior to this, I'd been on YouTube for a few years. I was what you would call a scattershot conspiracy theorist, talking about a bit of everything. By this point, I'd been in the game since around 2010, going down the rabbit holes everyone goes down when they first wake up, to use that phrase.
Right.
And yeah, for me, it was the end of the world stuff originally around 2012 that got me thinking. What's going on here? What are people seeing? What are they researching that's making them believe this kind of stuff? And then, like I said, I kind of went down every single rabbit hole imaginable from there. Um,
Yeah.
I was very much a new ager, and not in a hippie sense. I didn't look like one, but I was very much into the whole using psychedelics to explore consciousness type of thing. That's kind of the
Hmm.
realm I was in. I was very much, yeah, a consciousness explorer into all the Eastern mysticisms, that kind of thing, searching for some kind of spiritualism, and thinking I could find it all there. Um,
Yeah.
to quickly kind of summarize this, I did eventually, at the bottom of all my research, discover that the truth actually is in the biblical perspective. And Jesus
Mm.
Christ is I believe Jesus Christ died for our sins and rose from the dead, and I have faith in him,
Yeah.
and that's where I ended up. And I kind of realized everything is pointing towards that being the ultimate truth,
Mm.
and why we even have a conspiracy. So,
Yeah.
around the 2014 period, I was heavily seeped. Not only had I done all the occult research already, now I was going into biblical history. And I was looking into
Hmm.
things like the works of like Gary Wayne, Rob Skiba, Michael Heisen, all the big names, all the big ones, And they were giving me this information about biblical history that I just had never really considered before, about the giants, the Nephilim, um, the reasons for the flood, for example, and the wars, after the flood in the lands of Canaan. It all kind of made sense of a lot of things very quickly for me. And,
Yeah.
again, a few years of doing that, I suppose I became an advanced intermediate person in terms of knowledge at that kind of stuff. And I was just
Hmm.
doing my thing on YouTube. And I was very much one to look at symbols and signs. I like to decode symbols and find symbols and meanings in things they were trying to put out towards us in media, let's say. And
Yeah.
I just noticed that the clown was suddenly everywhere. With this
Mm.
2016 clown sightings around October, I think it was, similar time of year now, to be honest. And the media was just pointing the camera at all these clowns everywhere, which were scaring people, just kind of looking menacingly in their outfits, standing on street corners with balloons. Some of them have claimed to have had knives and were attacking people. And the media just made such a hype over it that I couldn't help but just feel, if the media is pointing the camera at them, then I think they want us to see this for some reason. And I couldn't quite put my finger
Yeah.
on it straight away. I didn't, you know, the reason I was suspicious of the clown stuff requires me to go back and explain another narrative which led up to this point. So like I said, very much
Yeah.
coming out of the new age psychedelic realm. I had taken a lot of heavy psychedelics, DMT, salvia, LSD, mushroom, all of that stuff. You know, I'd seen a thing or two, and I'd read a lot of experiences on forums of other people who do the same things. And a reoccurring
Yeah.
motif was that people would encounter jesters whenever they went and took DMT. And at the time, you don't think much
Wow.
of that. You don't really think much of it when you're in that world. I very much was of the mind, like most people are in that culture, that it's your own consciousness projecting an image at you in order to tell you something. So the archetype of the jester is there to make you not take life so seriously and to go against the narrative of the norms in society and to question how you should act. You know, it's all very Jungian stuff. The jester was just seen as a projected symbol of the collective conscious. It wasn't a real entity. When you're in that realm, you don't think of these things as demons, let's say. You think of them as a reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I very much was kind of in that realm initially. But then obviously being saved afterwards, leaving all that life behind, you know, and dropping all that stuff and then looking into the biblical perspective gave me a whole new perspective on these entities people encounter when going to these realms on dimethyltryptamine. And I realised that, no, these aren't like
Yeah.
projections of a collective humanity of something. These are actually real, conscious, separate entities from us with an agenda who happen to be in a particular place we can perceive when we unlock our senses with this particular drug. They are there and they're very real, you know, and
Yeah.
it's not, and they tend to
Right.
always have the same message. It was always something like, you are a god. Stop taking life so seriously. Why not just kill yourself? It doesn't really matter. You're all just one consciousness anyway. And they're incredibly irreverent towards your existence. They don't want you to exist, or,
Wow.
you know, it was generally always the same thing, you know, and people thought, oh, well, the jesters were mocking me and telling me that I'm a god in order to make me not take life so seriously anymore, in order to help my consciousness expand, or some nonsense like that is how people justified it. But that didn't never sat right with me. And obviously, with all the biblical
Right.
research, the research into the origins of demons with the Nephilim and the disembodied spirits and all this type of stuff, I was highly dubious of any entity people encounter when they take psychedelics by that point. And it was a lot for me
Yeah.
it was a lot for me to process at the time. I don't think it was something I easily got to grips with straight away. You know, in my early faith walk, it was something I
Right.
had to shed from my old past, and I had to reevaluate the things I had believed about the experiences I had had and heard other people having, you know. I mean, only
Yeah.
only after quitting psychedelics did I get heavily demonically attacked, and did I start having visions of jesters. So it was a bit different for me. So after I renounced all that stuff and moved on,
Okay.
after I, gave myself
I
over,
was going to ask you.
yeah,
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had personally seen the jesters when you were kind of going through those psychedelic trips, but
well,
you answered it, so keep going.
yeah, in a way I did and I didn't. I feel like it was a
Okay.
highly controlled vision given to me, to
Mm.
by God, well after the fact, in my own consciousness exploration. So, I had done a lot of psychedelics, and I had seen things in other realms that had proven to me, yes, there are other dimensions, there are spiritual realms. So these were a lot of things that made me realize maybe God is real too, and that's kind of, kind of snowballed. But I do have,
Yeah.
after the fact now, in hindsight, I do wonder if I was being protected from being encountered by jesters and entities. I do think maybe God was letting me see these
Sure.
things to get to the point rather than be messed around. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but
Yeah.
it feels like I
Yeah.
was being protected. I've always said my entire life, something's looking out for me. Even before I was any form of religious, I wasn't raised religious. I wasn't raised in a church or anything. I don't sound like a Christian. You know what I mean? Because I just was never in that world. But now that I am, it's kind of, I look back and realize I think I was always being protected in some way. Everything always has just seemed to work out miraculously and all these type of things. But anyway,
Right.
like I said, after the fact, I stopped all these drugs. I kept getting attacked with nightmares, visions, vivid dreams, and psychedelic nightmarish dreams, sleep paralysis, things like that. I had a moment where I was just
This was after you.
this is after I quit all the
Sorry.
drugs. This is after I had left that psychedelic life behind, and after I gave myself over to Christ, this is when I
Okay,
started to.
thank you.
This is when I started to get heavily attacked, and I do think in a way it was the demons within myself or in my own life or the oppressors around me in the spirit realm kind of attacking me because they were losing grip of me. I
Yes.
think that's probably what it was. And there was a good year where it was rough, and I still had some addictions I needed to get rid of. I mean, like I was still smoking cannabis, and I quit that a year after being saved, and then that brought a whole new wave of attacks. You know what I mean? And slowly but surely, my old self did shed away. And I was born again in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. And it wasn't an overnight transformation. There was an overnight transformation element to it in terms of my desires had changed. I no longer wanted to do the things that I once craved and desired and wanted to do. But in order to break addictions, that didn't happen overnight. So the process of doing this, I did find a lot of spiritual weird stuff happening to me, which was scary. I mean, one event was
Yeah.
like I said, I was in my living room watching TV with my dog next to me, and suddenly I was paralyzed. For nothing out of the ordinary was happening, but I was paralyzed, and the room started to spin in that very DMT-ish psychedelic mandala effect type of way, which I was familiar with. And then darkness started to seeping from the corners of all my vision, and it felt like I was dying. It's the only way I could
Wow.
describe it. I felt like my soul or spirit was being torn from my body, and I was in the process of just dying. My brain was shutting down. And
Sure.
the only thing I could think to do in that moment was say the words, "Jesus, help me." It's
Yeah.
all I could do, and
Mhm.
instantaneously it all stopped, and I was back in the room again. Kind of sweating and panting,
Amazing.
thinking, "What the hell was that?" sort of thing. And
Right.
again, similar things just kept happening. Like I had a dream or a nightmare where I was encountered by this strange Hatman entity. And the
Mm.
Hatman is a figure seen by thousands of people with many testimonies all over the earth of some strange trench coat wearing shadow entity with a trilby like hat, kind of just being around and scaring people, especially during sleep paralysis. And I had this vivid dream where he, after being offered tea by some dead relatives of mine and drinking the tea, suddenly I get a phone call in the dream, and somebody says on the other end of the call, "I've not forgotten about our previous conversation. I'm coming for you now." And
Oh.
then I remember in the dream this vision of another time, another dream I had where I was in some kind of weird hellish landscape festival type place, and then I was on a stage. And then I come back into this dream where I have this phone call, and then on the horizon is this Hatman figure coming towards me, and he is psychedelic to look at. He had multicolored ribbons just flying off behind him like Morris dancers in England or the Maypole dancers, a very paganish
Hmm.
looking ribbonish garb and dress, but with this purple top hat and this purple thing, and he had a cane as well, very much like a ringmaster of a circus. It was very much like that in a way, and he was coming at
Yeah.
me, and I ran for my life in the dream. He caught up with me, and I was adamant I was about to die again. And I wrenched myself awake screaming, and you don't forget stuff like this. It sticks with you, and
No.
it just felt bizarre. Like, what was this Hatman thing? Why the multicolors?
Yeah.
Why the ribbons? Why the cane? What does any of this mean? And again, I didn't make any sense of it then. It all came years
Mm.
afterwards where I kind of pieced it all together, but it all kind of amalgamated in one final random vision I had around the 2015 period. And again, I was kind of just in bed. I wasn't quite asleep, but I was kind of in that torpor going to sleep stage. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, and this wasn't like a dream, it was more like a flash, I was in the DMT realm, which I was very familiar with. I knew where I was instantaneously. Like, I've been here before, I know this place, I've consciously transferred here plenty of times. But this time I was
Hmm.
looking up at this enormous giant that was kind of melded into the realm in some weird biomechanical way. It was very bizarre to look at, and it had a black and white striped skin, and it had the face of a pointed viper-like jester clown thing with a huge wide purple smile and these big glowing golden purplish weird looking eyes, and its head was shaped like a jester's hat.
Oh
But
my gosh.
it's not that it was wearing jester's clothing or wearing a hat. It was physically shaped like that. its skull was shaped that way. And
Oh my.
I'm looking up at this thing, and it's enormous. It must be 60 to 80, 100 feet tall. You know what I mean? This is not as I'm an ant in comparison to it. You know, and
Right.
it's so large that I can see vehicles flying around it that look like they were manned by an individual, like a helicopter. Let's say a one-man helicopter. Let's say, but they were made of gold and they were kind of wisping around, kind of like the UFO phenomena we see with the orbs here. You know what I mean? Things like this were all over it, and it must have lasted 10 seconds, and then I was back. And that was another moment. It's like, what was that? What the hell was that? I had no idea what to make of that again. But all of this coinciding with all this research into the biblical perspective and, finding God and understanding the Nephilim and the 2016 clown sightings happened. And something was just compelling me after witnessing the media make such a big deal about the clown. What does this mean? This means something to the initiated. They don't put things on the TV unless they want you to see them, or they're trying to communicate something to those who understand the symbols that they're showing on the media. The media just doesn't point the camera at stuff inconsequentially. There's a reason behind everything they do. So I just kind of had this the compulsion to just piece things together, and I basically just typed in clowns, Nephilim, demon, DMT. I just kind of mashed stuff together into search engines, and
see what you can find.
Yeah. I found one video by a very small YouTube channel. Maybe it has like 100 subscribers. Still does to this day, actually. And it's called The Epic Conspiracy. And they had this one video about the giants of the ancient past, and that's all it was titled. And I don't know what compelled me to look at this video, but I clicked on it because it was part of my search. It came up when I was searching, and it was a parody video of conspiracy theorists. So it was somebody making fun of us, basically pretending to be a conspiracy theorist, talking about the Nephilim. And they did it in that very over-the-top, over-dramatic History Channel style voice. Like, the Nephilim of the ancient past, what were they? Were they giants? Were they, that kind of voice, and he was having these silly images coming up as he was speaking. And he describes the Nephilim, and he's like, the Nephilim have white skin and red hair. And, they were cannibalistic in nature. And then he says there's only one explanation for what these beings were. They were interdimensional killer clowns from out of space. And he's like, and he was making fun. He was mocking. He was just mocking the concept of the Nephilim even being real. He was like, you idiots believing this stupid stuff. It's like you believe in clowns, And then I actually thought, wait a minute. Like, you might not be taking it seriously, but there's something here, There's something about this, and I just started rolling with it, and here I am 7 years later, halfway through writing the book on the thing, with a 41 episode series, just showing that what we call the clown in the West is a purposely designed symbol, which is a caricatured image of what the Nephilim used to look like in the ancient past, and it was crafted for the specific reason that those in the West could dress like the Nephilim in order to be possessed by them with ease, publicly, without people realizing it. Because if you look at all folk traditions around the world, they follow this ancient practice of dressing like the ancestor spirits to be possessed by them. And my work is an anthropological study going through all these societies and basically finding that what they call their ancestor spirits are the Nephilim, or demons. And they dress like them, and the way they like to dress is pale white skin, some kind of red headdress when they're made of feathers or reeds. They would put polka dot makeup on themselves, wild tassels, multicolored frills, masks with big wide grins. They dress like clowns to be possessed by the ancestor spirits, which are the creators of their civilization in the ancient past, the Nephilim kings and rulers, which they equate to being their gods, their ancestors. And
fascinating.
And that's just scratching the surface, but that's it in a nutshell, And that's how I got there.
Well, oh my gosh, I wrote down some questions as you were talking, because I was like, oh my gosh, like my mind's just being blown. And You and I kind of stumbled upon this whole rabbit hole the same way. I love like the symbolism, putting patterns together myself. But going back to the clowns, personally, I was always terrified. I grew up a Christian, terrified of clowns, had no idea why, just terrified. Like I never had an experience where, someone dressed up as a clown and scared me. But there was something innately about it that I was just like, this is not right, And so I just think it's really interesting when I stumbled upon your YouTube. I was like, this guy is putting stuff together. I love it. So I wanted to ask you a question though, because you touched on something after you got saved. You said that you still were kind of being oppressed by demonic spirits. And I know there's a lot of people that will say, well, once you're saved, Christians can't have any of that happen to them. So I just was curious your thoughts on that.
Well, I would say I was filled with the Holy Spirit, but I still had work to do personally. I mean, God isn't going to do everything for you. You have to put your percentage of effort in, and like I said, I was at rock bottom. I was at the end of my university degree. I didn't know where I was going to end up living. And I had burnt every single receptor in my brain out through endless uses of psychedelics and things like MDMA and cocaine and alcohol. I was frazzled. I was done, and I felt like I was about to die. Basically, I felt spiritually dead, no direction in life, and I was just at breaking point. And I asked God, help me. Like I give it to you, And I've been in this conspiracy realm for a few years, and I'd been flirting with the idea of just taking that dive. Because you learn about conspiracy theories when you come at it from a new age perspective, and it's all about consciousness, it's all about frequencies, it's all about Gnosticism is a good way of doing it. How you can help your consciousness expand to the next dimension, type of stuff. You are a god type of attitude, and that was getting me nowhere. But I was kind of ignoring this research that kept pointing to it's Jesus. This is where you need to look into this, And I kept ignoring it, like, no, I don't want to look into that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, But I was at the end of my tether where it's like nothing's giving me answers. I need to look into this angle. And when I did start looking into the angle, the conviction of the Holy Spirit started to come onto me, where I realized this is true. This is it. And I have a lot of work to do. I'm still a heavy addict. I have desires for things that I shouldn't have that are hurting me and killing me. And after asking God to save me over the period of it took 8 years to fully lose every addiction. I only quit nicotine at the start of this year. And I've been smoking since I was 15. Now, I hadn't been smoking cigarettes. I went on an e-cigarette 4 years ago, and I've been cutting down the amount. And I finally took that final plunge at the start of this year to just get rid of it all, and I haven't touched it since. But that was a long process. I was saved in 2000. I was saved in about 2000 and 2000. I think it was March 2014, if I remember correctly. So it's been almost 10 years to fully lose everything. But, I had a cannabis addiction to get rid of, which I've been smoking for 8 years, I had to get rid of all the psychedelic addictions, the uppers, all that type of thing. And I had work to do spiritually. I had to change my attitude as well. I wasn't a good person. I was quite vengeful, I had a lot of rage and I was holding on to a lot of I wanted revenge and things like, I had hatred, in me that needed to go as well. And that day where I gave everything to him, I remember I was at a stag do for my brother-in-law, and I was in a hotel room, and I ran a bath, and I hadn't had a bath since I was a kid, because I'd only ever lived anywhere that had a shower cubicle, And I ran this bath in this hotel, and I basically asked God to save me, and then went under the water just in the bath. And that's when I suddenly felt a huge rush of power in my chest. I had to get up. I leaped out of the bath, and I thought I was having a panic attack. But then the feeling left as quickly as it came. And I do think I kind of accidentally baptized myself in some way. Now I think about it, and all I know is from that day, I am not the same person I was. Everything changed. I didn't feel like I wanted to do the things I used to want to do. I became more forgiving of the people who had wronged me. What I enjoyed doing now disgusted me. But it didn't mean my addiction still wasn't there. It didn't mean I didn't still crave the nicotine. It meant I now felt convicted of doing it. and I knew it was
Yeah.
wrong. And I knew I had to stop, and it took time, but I couldn't have done it
Mhm.
without him. I couldn't have done it without him,
Wow.
and it wouldn't have happened without my faith and who I was then, a drug taking, new age, egotistical maniac who thought he was a god. To
Mhm.
I have a beautiful wife, a lovely son who's about to turn 2 in a month, and I've worked as a manager. I've gained experience leading people since then. I've been put in places that I feel have taught me so much, and I am my life is far better since doing it, and
Yeah.
I know this idea, once you have the Holy Spirit, you can't be attacked by demons. I mean, I just don't believe that. That's just
I
not the
don't either.
case, and I think it might be naive
Yeah.
to think that way, to be honest, because
Yeah.
you might think once saved, always saved, which might be true, but that doesn't mean you can't slip up. It doesn't mean you can't
Yeah.
open
Open a
gateways.
door.
It doesn't mean
Exactly.
you can, and you've got to.
Sure.
That's what repentance truly is. You've got to make sure those
Hmm.
doors stay shut.
Absolutely.
And more so for a Christian, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the
Well
issue,
said.
if you're knowledgeable about it, then you'll be aware that you're being demonically attacked. Those who aren't saved, in a sense, don't know they have demons, because the demons kind of are a part of their personality in a way. It's a different relationship, and I feel like
Mhm.
a battle would happen within you, which was within me, as I explained with all these experiences I had. These psychedelic attacks, I would call them.
Mhm.
I think that was the Holy Spirit warring with the demons in a way.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit wins, and but it's not just as simple as, right, our time's up, we're just going to leave without a fight. The demons don't want to be cast out.
Right.
They
They like it in
they
there.
like it in there, yeah, and they hate
They
being
do. They're comfy.
they hate being out of a body. So it's kind of
Right.
and
Right.
they'll do anything they can to make sure, even if they do cast them out, they're going to try and pull you
Hmm.
back. They're going to try
Yep.
and and that's just the way it is. It's a never-ending war. It's Ephesians 6:12. We're wrestling
Hmm.
against powers here, powerful
Yeah.
beings. And although our battle isn't physical, it comes with physical desires and temptations, and we have to always deny the flesh. It's a constant struggle. It's not just something that you have to, now I believe now and I go to church every Sunday, so there you go, it's fine. I don't think that's,
Yeah.
and I know, I mean, again, I'm not a churchianity type of guy. I have my own church. I have people on my own Telegram I commune with and share ideas with. And it's kind of that praise endlessly type of thing. I'm in that kind of way. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess that's my long answer to what you said there, in a way.
No, I'm glad you elaborated because I love your testimony. I think that it's going to touch a lot of people who are listening because, I mean, there's lots of facets where we can go and lots of kind of trails we can take with even just what you said there with your testimony. But I think it's important for people to know as a Christian, it's this progressive sanctification. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to work out your salvation, the Bible says, with
Mhm.
fear and trembling. And there is going to be some hangups along the way, and the enemy likes to come back and attack you, and Christians more. And so I appreciate you just being honest and transparent with that.
Mhm.
I love your testimony. It's excellent. I think that it will be very impactful for the people listening. So thank you for that. So kind of going back to just the clown, kind of bringing that to yourself and saying, what is going on here? There's more here. And I remember that 2016, you were talking about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right. And I think the same way, like there's something more going on when the media is pushing certain things.
Mhm.
They're telling us something, right? So, okay, so go back, you're kind of stumbling upon this research, you start looking into other cultures and stuff and what this represents. So are you saying they're kind of conjuring up these Nephilim, these spirits, these demons by dressing like this? And is
Yeah.
it just hidden in plain sight for us in the West? Are we just like totally naive to this?
Well, actually, we have our own traditions, but we
Um,
have a different view on it. So first of all, the the idea that you dress like something to allow it in is basically the predominant belief for most folk traditional cultures all around the earth. You can go to every single continent, into every single country, and you'll find that every country has a folk tradition, and it's the
yeah.
oldest traditions, the ancient rooted stuff. And you'll find these go back as far as even before the flood in some cases. They are word of mouth, orally passed down, never changed traditions, and we're talking about going back to times which are post and antediluvian, where there were monsters around, there were giants around. These are the oldest. And you have to understand, Gary Wayne laid out in his own book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, far better than I ever can, but it's basically
Yeah.
these things
Good book.
became the kings and rulers of the land very quickly, just by virtue of being extremely tall and imposing. Who can stand against a giant, And these things
Right.
became the rulers and kings, and therefore the builders of the ancient systems and cultures, including the megalithic structures, all this type of thing. It's explained by basically just giants, So these were the kings,
Yeah.
which basically answered to the fallen angels. They were the physical potentates of the spiritual hierarchy. They were on the earth making
Right.
sure that the people either worshipped them, worshipped the pantheon of gods, or worshipped the sun, or worshipped anything but the creator, basically. And
Yes.
the kings were there to make sure that the agenda was at play to corrupt humanity. They were the physical versions, and along with ruling over humanity, they had a good go at eating us as well and subjugating us in heinous, horrible ways. It was a brutal existence, but they are accredited by most modern folk traditions as the builders of their civilizations, their
Mhm.
ancestor spirits. It's not their aunties and uncles, their great grandmas and granddads that they're evoking when they call ancestor spirits. That's just our language, mistranslation, kind of not understanding what they really mean. They mean the Nephilim. They mean
Yeah.
the ancient spirits, the ancient ones, you know what I mean? They're
Right.
the old generals, the old guard. So what they do, and it's the most common practice. It's literally every single continent does this. Every culture, whether it's Africa, in Australia, the Polynesian Islands, in China, in Siberia, South America, North America. It doesn't matter where you go. They all have this tradition of I dress like something to be purposefully possessed by it, and they gain things from this. The tribe, usually the shaman is the one that's supposed to lead this, or be the one that gets possessed. The ancient shaman
Yeah.
cultures, and they can do this and make it easier by taking things like extreme psychedelics and drugs to make the process easier. But the aim is
Hmm.
they get possessed by it, and then the tribe could ask it questions, ask it to resolve family issues, ask it for advice, or even gift upon them strength or something. And now, if the culture
Yeah.
isn't so hierarchical that only the shaman can do it, sometimes in a lot of African cultures, it's a free-for-all. Everybody and anybody can dress like them to be possessed by them. And they usually ask in these warlord-like cultures for strength, for the ability to be cut and not bleed, for the ability to run super
Hmm.
fast or have immense strength, and basically the power of the demon runs through them, and they have the power of a giant, that type of thing. So people do it for many reasons. It's usually to gain something from the spirits. And you'll find
Yeah.
that, in these cultures, it's not hidden, it's not occulted. They know what they're doing, and the demons are quite brash and open about it. They love being venerated. They love that this
Mm.
entire tribe wants them to be there and wants to glorify them and be in awe of them. They feed off that kind of energy.
Yeah.
They were once kings and rulers. So you'll
Mm.
find it's not a hidden practice anywhere else, but in the West we have a very different view of it. We're a highly Christianized area of land. The Western Hemisphere, we'll call it, whether it's even the Americas or Europe, were kind of
Yeah.
seeped into us to have at least a base knowledge of Jesus. We all know who he
Yeah.
is and what the point of it was, and so whether you believe it or not, we are a Christianized realm. So
Mm.
the demons have to be more careful here. It's not like it is in these African remote tribes, for example. They have to remain hidden
Yes.
because we could cast them out or use the authority of Jesus on them quite easily. So they're not so brash or open about it in the West. And something happened somewhere in the ancient past, maybe when the Catholicism took over after the collapse of Rome throughout Europe, but we developed a strange tradition where we had this ancient Celtic tradition called the Wild Man tradition, where we would and it's based in a lot of Thracian Dionysian cult worship as well from the Mediterranean, and it's kind of spread all throughout European land. But we call it the Festival of the Wild Man or something like that. It's called the Kukuri in Bulgaria. It's the most modern example we have that seems extremely unchanged from its ancient past. And the people basically dress like extremely hairy, sharp-toothed, horned wild beasts with clubs, and they're like
Yeah.
giants. And they have this festival around the Lent period before the fasting, which is a Catholic type of tradition, kind of like a paganism turned Catholic. You know, it's kind of they've melded it
Yeah.
all together to Christianize these pagan rituals, and something happened where we now have this strange belief in the West that we dress like monsters to blend in and scare them away. We dress like them so they won't bother us. You know, we dress like them to scare away the bad spirits before the harvest of winter or so. You know, we have this other completely opposite worldview to what a costume means. Everywhere else, it's you dress like the thing to let the thing in. But for us,
Yeah.
it's you dress like the thing to scare it away. And that just, to me, seems incredibly stupid and naive.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
why would dressing
Yeah.
like a scary monster scare away a real scary monster? It wouldn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's laughable.
Yeah.
It's actually laughable when you think about it, you know. And
It
I
is.
think because of this naivety we have behind it, it's for example, Halloween's coming up, you know, Samhain, this
Yep.
ancient pagan festival which has developed into this weird commercialized thing where we dress like monsters for candy and trick or treat and so forth, which kind of came from like an Americanism version of it. But its roots are in a pagan worship of a time where the veil is thinnest between the spirit realm and the physical realm. You know, that's where it comes from, that belief, you know. And
Right.
for some reason, again, we think, oh, well, people would start dressing like monsters, so when this veil is thinner, it would scare them away, or at least it wouldn't bother them because they think they're one of them type of thing. And that's kind of, you know, like this whole Halloween concept. But what we're actually doing today is dressing like monsters to open more gateways to allow more monsters in during a time when the veil is the thinnest for the monsters to get here.
Exactly.
It's kind of like we've been
Exactly.
extremely fooled into
Oh,
how dangerous that is, you know, because we don't have
right.
this belief that dressing like something is important.
Right.
We don't understand that that's a thing, but the people, the Freemasons who invented the clown, they know full well what they were doing. You know, they created
Right.
a costume which the public would think is just a bit of fun for the kids. But what it
Yeah.
truly is a copy of a lot of these costumes are found in these folk traditions. And I do believe they've kind of amalgamated together from the traveling, you know, the traveling men, the Freemasons. They're very worldly. They know a lot about other world cultures, especially cultures who venerate demons, because they too worship and work with demons, you know. So they know what other cultures do to try
Right.
and bring them into the world. And I think around the 1800s, these traveling Freemasons took pieces from all of these folk traditional cultures, their costumes, and made a clown out of it. They kind of mashed it all together, you know. And again, pale white skin, red hair is the most common description of any modern encounter people have had with Nephilim creatures. I think, I mean,
Yeah.
if you go to the City Car or you know of Lovelock Cave in America, for example, it does these stories of
Yes.
ancient tribes, you know, fighting against cannibalistic
Yeah.
pale skinned red haired giants who they ran into a cave and blocked the cave up and set fire to the entrance and killed them all, you know. And there's evidence to say
Yeah.
the remains were still there and dug up again in the 1800s, and the claims were true, you know. And white skin, red hair is the most common motif, and it seems like that's the base for a clown, you know. And they worked from there basically and added other features on it as like a stereotypical cartoonish caricature. But now, you know, they get to wear the clown costume, channel the demons that they work with, and we think it's harmless and a bit of fun. Because, for example, Shriners, every shrine
Yes.
has a clown sect, you know, and they have to be a Shriner clown.
I saw that.
Like, why? Of all
Yeah.
things, you know, and they hide
Right.
under the mask of charity. Well, we're doing it for the kids, for our children's hospitals, you know. But it's kind of, well,
Right.
are you though? When we understand now that, you know, you venerate the Nephilim, work with the Nephilim, you're basically the physical foot soldiers for the spirit realm. Would it not
Yep.
make sense that you would find a smoke screen where you can dress like your gods and channel them easier? And the public would have been none the
Yeah.
wiser, you know. And the clown is the perfect costume for that, because it is, like I said, just
Wow.
a copy of all these other folk traditional examples of demonic ancestor worship. It's just so occulted here in the West that we're oblivious to it. And now, if you look at my
Yeah.
work and you see the examples I show, it kind of starts to become you kind of can't unsee it. You start to see it everywhere, and you realize musicians know this trick too. And you'll find in the music industry, dressing like a red-haired, white-skinned, wide-grinned monster clown thing will get you very far in the industry. You will actually be elevated, in fact. You will be put by the Freemasons that run the damn thing in the spotlight, you know, and you'll be given
Yep.
gifts to sing and perform extremely well by the demons you're channeling, you know. And
Yeah.
whether you're conscious that that's what you're doing or not, you're inspiring generations of younger artists to grow up and mimic their idols and do the same thing, and therefore channel more demons. The demons then get to be venerated on stage by millions of people as gods once more, and the musician gets to gain all the sex, the drugs, the veneration, and all the other worldly pleasures they get from that. But what
Right.
the price is, you dress like more and more clownish and insane and colourful to channel more
Yeah.
demons, and
Oh my gosh.
the most major example I could come up with off the top of my head, a true superstar, was David Bowie, who had his alter ego
Yeah.
Iggy Stardust, which was a white-skinned, psychedelic-coloured, fractal patterned wearing, costumed, red-haired monster. And that's
Yep.
the point. That's what they do, and they put these things as idols, and if you, the more you do that, and the more you show the black and white fractal pattern checkerboard, or you will just be chosen. You will just be. Everyone else will be told you are the best thing ever. You'll be put on the
Yeah.
radio incessantly because you perpetuate more portal opening, shall we say? And
Yeah.
I think the majority don't know that that's what they're doing, but there are some out there who do. And I think it's a bit of ignorance mixed with intentional malevolence, but. It's a clever practice, and it's
It is.
if the industry
It
is
is.
owned by these demons and these people who run these societies, and it's if you dress how they want you to dress, you will get far. That's the trick. That's the real secret. It's not about talent.
Yes.
It's about
Right.
how do you present yourself. That's basically all it comes
Yeah.
down to. I've learned, and it's trippy stuff. I'll stop. I've
Fascinating.
ranted enough. I'll let you go. Sorry, I went on a bit there, but go on.
No, don't be sorry. I love this because I mean, like I said, this is just fascinating to me. And it really does touch every part of our society. And, kind of touching on the point where you said, we just are so oblivious to this. I couldn't agree more because I myself have been in ministry for 30 years and I've traveled all over the world, but mainly in areas like Haiti and Costa Rica. But Haiti specifically, they practice voodoo. And
Yeah.
so you start to see how these other cultures really understand this supernatural spiritual realm and they believe in it. And yet you come to the West and they're like, demons, huh? Like they're just, have no clue. And you talk about stuff like you're talking about, Paul, and it might be hard for some people to wrap their minds around this. But guys, we've got to start understanding that we live in a spiritual and a physical realm. They are two intermeshed. You can't separate the two because we are spirit, right? Like it's part of our world system. And those in these kind of higher positions, the global elitists, whatever you want to call them, the satanic Luciferians who run the world temporarily, they know this and they are perpetuating this and it's hidden in plain sight. And us who don't understand it, or those that don't understand it, are really just naive, and ignorance is not bliss. You are opening yourself up to potentially darker things. So yeah, I mean, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No. What you said there
Yeah.
about obviously the Vodou religion in Haiti,
Mhm.
and that itself has its roots in an African religion, and it's all about Papa Legba, or Legba being the head Iwa, or the head god. And the way he dresses, funnily enough, is a hat man. He's a cane carrying, trench coat wearing, hat wearing entity, and the Haitian culture know full well. And they do this on purpose. They wear a top hat, put on skull makeup, white face makeup with a skull. They put on a suit with a cane, and they know they're doing that to purposely channel Papa Legba. Or Baron Samedi is another example of the same pantheon who dresses the same way. And there's another Baron as well, which is the first murderer, and he dresses very similar as well. And they do it fully well with the intention to be possessed by them, and that's why they smoke cigars and drink heavy amounts of whiskey, because they know that's what the spirit likes to drink and do. And they often report, they get possessed by it and then forget that they were possessed by it once the spirit leaves. They don't have any memory of what happened during that time because they were fully taken over, and the cigar in hand and whiskey in hand, ready, waiting for the spirit to enjoy. And they give these gifts to the spirits. It's like a symbiotic relationship in a way, and they know what they're doing. They're not like, they don't even hide it. They tell you, so we're doing it to be possessed by the spirit of Papa Legba. That's what we're doing. I want Baron Samedi to possess me. That's what I want
Right.
him to do, and in
Yeah.
return, I think they get blessings for harvest and crops and other things or whatever they claim to be getting, power as well, witchcraft power,
Yeah.
the power to cast spells on other people, and that's where voodoo comes into it with the dolls and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's dark black witchcraft at the end of the day. But
Yep.
I just thought
Absolutely.
I'd elaborate on that because it's interesting that
No.
they dress like the purple dressed hat man, that I saw. It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is, well, you're talking about that, and a personal story quickly, but my mom lived with me for a while, but before she did, after my father died, she would see this man. She told me, she was very old. She was on, medication, had Parkinson's, but she would tell me that there was a man visiting her at night with a hat on, a dark, tall, black figure with a hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea about the hat man, or if that was even it. But it makes me think of that. And I mean, she came and lived with us, and she said he visited her again. And I was like, oh no, not in my house. I'm like, you're not welcome here in Jesus' name. Not going to happen. And then it went away. I mean, I told it, basically use my authority in Christ to get rid of that in our home. But I just find it interesting. I was just curious, when you said that, I was like, gosh, I wonder if that was what was trying to visit her. She was a Christian, but, obviously not feeling well and potentially having
the
doors
hat man
open
is a
there.
tough one. The hat man is, if I find I'm working on it. I've interviewed a lot of people about this guy. I'm not sure where he fits into the hierarchy exactly. So far, my theory is that he is basically like the accountant of the spirit realm. He makes sure all the contracts are in order, all the spirit contracts. He's the guy who comes to fulfill the contract or to make sure you sign on the line. In a way, he's kind of the enforcer of the contracts. He seems like he's a step above the lowly Nephilim in a way. I don't know if people say, oh, he's the devil, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's many hat men either, to be honest, or if it is just one hat man. It's hard to say, it really is, but it just get the intentions of this particular creature are not good. I can tell you that much. But in terms of symbolism of the hat man, I think it's worth going into this because it does fit into the whole circus theme and the symbolism of a clown. So first of all, we're back to voodoo, for example. Voodoo is a strange mix of Catholicism, Freemasonry, and the, like I said, this ancient ancestor worship spirit culture from Africa. So Freemasonry is mixed in there, hence why they dress with a cane, a suit, and a top hat. That's a direct influence from Freemasonry itself with the white gloves as well, okay? So the worshipful Grand Master of a lodge, a Freemason lodge, is the only one allowed to wear a top hat. He's the leader of the rituals. He's the one who orchestrates the rituals that the members follow. So, first of all circuses, the original circuses were run by Freemasons. Every last one of them. Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, P.T. Barnum and Bailey, both Freemasons. All the Ringling Brothers, all Freemasons. And they created a combined circus in America, and they put on a huge spectacle show during the early, the mid-1800s, going towards the 1900s, just before the huge crash. Okay, so pre-Depression era type of period, And they basically put on these performances, which were called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Now, Freemasonry is obsessed with King Solomon. They just can't get enough of the guy. He's considered to be the founder of Freemasonry himself. He was the one who initially got control over the demons with the ring, the godly ring, and he got demons to help him build the Temple of Solomon. And basically, Freemasons are obsessed with rebuilding the Temple of Solomon. And during this time period, they were all over America. They were building Solomon temples everywhere. There's a lot of money going about before the whole market crash. And they were just splurging it everywhere. But all these Freemasons put on this huge spectacle in the circuses they created, called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and every single thing to do with it was created by Freemason affiliated companies. So all the costumes were sewn and created and designed by the same companies who made all the costumes for the Freemasons in their lodges for their own rituals. All the backdrops, all the artwork, everything was made by Freemason affiliated companies and Freemasons themselves. So this was a huge ritual performance. Freemasons take this stuff seriously, it's not a joke to them, and you'll find, and I write about it in my book, but we've got the receipts, but you'll find that this giant spectacle of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba was basically a copy of the rituals performed in the lodges. but they transferred it onto a huge grand spectacle of the circus, And what is the ringleader of a circus but not the Hat Man? He is the grand worshipful master, the orchestrator of the rituals in the lodges, is now the ringleader, the orchestrator of the ritual in the circus, and he is the Lord of the Ring. He is Solomon, he is the ringmaster, and he is the one using the ring to control the demons to build the temple or fulfill the ritual, shall we say. And what are clowns, if not a purposely invented symbol to represent the demons? So the ringmaster orchestrating the demons is the Freemason Grandmaster worship, the leader of the Freemason lodges, orchestrating the ritual to venerate and bring forth the demons. It's the same thing, but made public. It's been externalized, So the Hat Man is a serious character, even the Freemasons understand. That he is the leader of the ritual, which evokes the demons. Or, again, allegorically in a circus, it's the ringmaster orchestrating the performance of the clowns.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That is a great tie-in. I'm so glad you talked about that, because would you say then, like Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter, is that the Hat Man too?
I think it's an aspect of it. He has pale skin, wild fractal coloured hair, and he wears the hat. But I think it's a play on it more than anything. It's more of a cartoonized, caricatured kind of nod, wink, wink to the Hat Man. I think
right. Like we know. Do you guys know?
Yeah. But I think the real Hat Man is more serious.
Yeah,
he's a lot more. He's a lot more put together. He's the leader of the ring. He's the one.
That makes total sense.
It's not. He's not a lunatic fool like they would like you to believe in the media. It's it's that type of thing. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because that's good. That's good stuff. So, okay, go back to kind of describe how the look of the clown ties into the Nephilim. Like, kind of go through the pale skin, red hair again, and then move us through that a little bit.
Sure. Sorry, someone's just pulled up in their extremely loud, obnoxious car. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you can hear that that vibration there, but he's definitely compensated for something, this guy, I can tell you that much. But other than that, so let's break down the clown then, and let's link it to the Nephilim. Let's go through all the symbolism and explain this.
Okay.
So first of all, it might be worthy just to tie in the whole circus thing, a bit of prehistory to the circus, so to know just where a clown actually comes from. European-wise, like how did we get a clown exactly? Who created that, and then we can go into breaking down the clown symbolically. So first of all, the first clowns weren't like we know them today. They were more just performers within traveling troupes, theatre groups. They were there to bring a bit of levity to a pretty bleak existence, let's put it that way. Okay, they were street performers in the Greek and Roman theatres as well. They were kind of mimics. They would mime people. They would mimic people for a laugh. They would pretend to be rich people or toffs in a way, and to make the poor people laugh. And, they were like mimes more than clowns, I would say. And they weren't like the loutish, colourful, weird-looking, backflipping buffoons we know clowns to be. They weren't that kind of thing. They were more of a well-respected, serious tradition originally in Rome, It's the first Roman clowns are where we get things like the word moron or stupid from. Stupidus and moronus were actually two types of clowns. Okay, and it's where mimes come from as well. So after the collapse of Rome, performing kind of was frowned upon by the highly Catholicized, Christianized version of these once pagan cultures, and it was considered, deceiving people by pretending to be something you're not is of the devil type of attitude. And that's where people explain you get this dark ages of creativity where the only kind of performances that were allowed had to be highly Christian in nature, you know what I mean? And you couldn't really have these jester-like fool characters unless they were representing the devil, and that's just how it kind of became. And you'll find during that medieval period is where you get jesters, court jesters, because these performers needed work still, and you find only the rich and the hierarchical aristocracies were allowed to have them, It was kind of a commodity for a king to have a jester. It was kind of like, my jester's funnier than yours sort of situation. You know, there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
But a lot of these performers who lost a lot of work found work by going to be courtly performers for rich people. You know, so you'll find that that's kind of where clowning in Europe began. But then during that period, not much really changed until about the 1600s, where you would find that a lot of these performers formed travelling troupes coming mainly out of Italy, out of Rome, that would travel around Europe, making quick makeshift stages, and they were called the Commedia dell'arte. And that's where we get the very first proto-clown character called Harlequin. So Harlequin was a mashup of the Wild Man tradition. So you had these traveling artists going around with these stock characters where they put on improvised performances. And a stock character is like a basic, well-known character every society can understand: the rich man, the soldier, the daughter of the rich man, the slave, some of the servants, just basic stock people that any society can kind of grasp. And you'll find they kind of went to each area of Europe and realized everywhere has this wild man tradition where they venerate this demonic entity, this hairy beast, this giant with a club. And you find in the French tradition, going into the Norse Teutonic traditions, they have this thing called Helikins, which was a tall, hairy beast man with a club who had a band of roaming demons who went with him from village to village, causing chaos. The very out of the medieval tradition of demonic fear. They had this myth of this tall demonic Nephilim creature with demons following him everywhere, and it was called Helikins, and that's what Harlequin was kind of based on, the wild man. And his character also kind of had a strange Mediterranean mix with it from coming out of Italy in that area of Greece, where the performers are from. And they kind of mixed Helikins, the beast, with Hermes and Dionysus out of Mediterranean tradition, and Hermes was quick of flight of foot. He had feathers, he had wings on his feet type of thing. He had his caduceus, which was this staff with snakes going up it, and he had this magic wand, and he was very fast and witty and quick, and that quick-wittedness and that fleet of foot acrobatic nature was mixed with this hairy beast character coming out of Northern Europe, the Wild Man. So Harlequin, which was then introduced as a stock character into this travelling performance group, is literally a representation of ancient Greek gods mixed with demonic giants. That's literally what Harlequin is. That's his character.
Yeah.
And he very much was dressed in a black mask covered in fur with an ugly nose and big wide wild eyes like the wild man. He had a white loose clothing on with hair, tufts of multicoloured hair attached to him, and he had a club, and that was his slapstick. And what the character of Harlequin would basically be acrobatic, fleet of foot, incredibly fast and witty, but rude and crude and brash, and very making jokes with his stick as though it was a phallus, you know what I mean? And very, very much that kind of clown, jokerish character, irreverent, you know what I mean? And every sinful thing he would do, gluttony, wrath, all of it, you know what I mean? He would do it all, and that was his thing. He was that demonic stock character, which is a mashup of a lot of strange European traditions, but basically rooted in the demonic. Harlequin is a demon through and through. Harlequin is a representation of a Nephilim. So then there was also a clown character, which came out of Greek tradition as well. And I find the most popular clown originally was Poirot out of French tradition. But Poirot the clown wasn't what we call a clown today. It was a servant of the rich man, called Pantaloon. The rich man was called Pantaloon, and the servant was just kind of like you laughed at his expense. He was like a pathetic, sad character. He loved the daughter of the rich man, but she didn't care about him, and he was just a loser, and that was funny. Then that was the point. He wanted the girl and he would never get her, and everyone just laughed at him. Haha, look at that pathetic clown over there. How sad, whatever. Like a sad sack type character. And he wore relatively boring clothes, just loose, baggy white clothing with some black pom poms. Nothing major, nothing outrageous. Kind of a background character. Clown wasn't really it. No one cared about Clown, you know. It was all about Harlequin originally. He was the crazy wild card that everyone wanted to go and see the Harlequinades for, to see Harlequin do his crazy performances and be this demonic, cheeky character. But then going through the 16th century, the Renaissance, you know, through to the 17th, 18th century, things changed. You would find that with the rise of Poirot, the white-faced clown, you would find that that French version of the clown did become very popular. People kind of empathized with the loser clown in a way. And he was the first character in the Comédie de l'Art to not wear a mask. All of his expressions were done visually with his own facial features, and that was quite impressive for the time. It's like people liked that. And you would find in Britain, the British theatres of Drury Lane and Sadler's Wells had adopted this tradition of the Comédie de l'Art into their own things called a pantomime. And a pantomime was originally like a 3-hour-long or 4-hour-long show in the evening, which would be serious drama in the first half, and then in the last hour it would just be an insane, wacky chase scene involving all the stock characters, and that was called the Harlequinade at the end of the pantomime. And it would just be a crazy Looney Tunes style chase scene where Harlequin would steal the daughter of the rich man, and then the rich man and his servant clown would chase after them, and that was the gag, trying to catch Harlequin and the daughter. Clown and the old man would chase after them. And that was the whole show for an hour. And they would do all sorts of things, jump out of windows, down trapdoors. You know, it was just a wild spectacle. They would poke each other with hot pokers. They would just do grotesque things to each other through massive stage tricks. And they would be fine the next scene and carry on. You know what I mean? It'd just be a constant gag after gag after gag after gag of just brutal body comedy, hurting each other, trying to get the woman back, you know. And this is where the British clown kind of, in the 1800s, there was a performer called Joseph Grimaldi, and he was just insane. People could not get enough of this guy. He was a rock star. Like, people loved him because he just brought clown to life. It was hilarious. He was so funny on stage. People just laughed hysterically at everything he did. He just had a way about him. It was insane. And he was so popular that clown became the main character. Harlequin was just a boring, lovesick fool by this point, who was always just pining after the daughter of the rich man. He became the sad clown, basically. And it kind of left a void, it left a vacuum. If Harlequin isn't the rude, demonic character anymore, who is? And clown took over, basically, and became that demonic, crude character in the British theatre. So you'll find, at the exact same time period, this switch was done where clown became the main attraction for the Harlequinades. A costume change was taking place at the same time. Charles Dibdin was the Freemason, along with his son Thomas Dibdin, who owned these theatres. So he was a Freemason. He was well into the entertainment industry. He was a well-established musician and composer. He wrote a lot of these plays that people saw at these theatres. He was basically like an Illuminati music industry mogul of the time, like we have today. He was the old school version, and the popular thing of the time wasn't movies, it was theatre, and he was orchestrating it, you know. And he did a costume change, which basically turned the boring servant white outfit of a clown into a multicolored, psychedelic, fractaled, folk tradition looking thing. He made a switch then. And Joseph Grimaldi is said to be the one to create the multicolored face patterns, but I doubt that, because other clowns had been doing it before him, so I don't know why he was given credit for that. It seems like Joseph Grimaldi has been accredited for creating the modern clown. He's called the father of all clowns. He's called, all clowns today are called Joeys, named after Joseph Grimaldi. But Joseph Grimaldi was just a performer. He was just the guy who brought the clown to life. He didn't create the costume. It was a Freemason called Charles Dibdin. And no one knows that. No one talks about that. Everywhere you look, it just accredits Joseph Grimaldi to being the guy who created the modern clown. He's just a patsy. He's not the guy who did it, you know. He's just a really, really famous idol of the time who performed the clown better than everyone else. But that's where we get the modern clown from. It's all modelled after that original costume change after Freemasonry. And only after that did all the other clowns of the time start copying it. They were like, we have to dress like this. This is it, you know. And then circuses started to appear not long afterwards. And the clown was a main attraction to all these circuses. And I don't find coincidences anymore. And when a Freemason
Right.
is involved with the purposeful changing of a costume that has been the same for
Thank you.
300 years. Think about this. This costume
Yeah.
hasn't changed for hundreds of years of tradition. And suddenly, one Freemason just comes along, finds an idol who's worshipped by the public, and makes him dress like a demon.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we still do today in the music industry. You find an idol people
Right.
idolize and worship, and you make them start doing demonic
Mm-hmm.
things and presenting more like a demon. Because the people who idolize them
Yes.
will mimic it, and that's exactly what happened then. It was just an old school version of it, And like I said, since then, clowns have just been everywhere. So let's break down a clown now. Let's come full circle. Now we know where they come
Yeah.
from. Let's explain. So a basis of a clown is white skin, red hair. The most common
Yeah.
descriptor of every Nephilim everywhere, outside and within biblical theology. Okay, it's a trait picked up likely from the mixing of fallen angels with humans. It seems to just be a strange side effect of having fiery red hair mixed with a porcelain white glistening pearlescent style skin. It just seems to be some kind of marker of mating with a fiery serpent, which is what the Seraph are described as, flying fiery serpents. So I think that's where the red hair mixes into it. But that's the base of a clown: white skin, red hair. That's how everyone dresses as a basic clown. So let's get into the nuances. So start with the face. A clown, for example, would have a wide, exaggerated red smile. Okay, that's a copy of the serpentine features of the Nephilim, who also would have had wider than normal mouths, which could open like a snake, like a serpent. Snakes can dislocate their jaws, for
Right.
example, to eat their prey. And that big wide grin is a serpent trait. It's humans mixed with snake. You end up with wide, elongated, exaggerated features like a wide mouth. And the Nephilim skulls that
Oh my gosh.
the Nephilim skulls that were found in the 1800s were said to have double rows of teeth. They had longer than average wide smiles. Because of this, it's a serpent trait that they had picked up. So that's why the clown often is depicted with a wide, painted-on smile. The crosses on the eyes, or the line going down the eye, is a common trait you'll find. That represents a reptilian slit of an eye pupil. It's a reptilian trait, again, just mixed into the clown makeup as a metaphor, as a symbol, as as a concept. If it's not the reptilian slit, you'll find that they paint an incredibly high brow ridge all the way up the forehead. Two upside down U's just above the eyes, They make it look really round and large, and then they colour it in blue. Now, if you do that and then close your eyes, it looks like you have giant glowing blue eyes. Again, another Nephilim trait. They were the glowing ones. They were said to have larger than normal, bulbous, glowing eyes. So that clown makeup is just a mimic of that. Again, mixed with the big, wide, serpentine grin. You'll find that a lot of clowns wear skull caps, which elongate the skull, make it look longer than usual, making it like they have a cone head or a pin head. All the skulls that are found in these mounds have elongated features. You find the Nephilim did have stretched out long features like a snake, like a serpent. That's just a consequence of mixing humans with snakes, and the exaggerated size of the forehead in clown makeup with the hair on the sides is to mimic this trait once again, a Nephilim trait. You'll find the clowns wear a ruff around the neck, a ruffle. It's a really common thing, like a circular Victorian style ruffle. And people say, esoterically, publicly, that's to mock the aristocracy. That's to make fun of the rich people. But what it actually is a reptilian frill. It's a trait, once again, of lizards. You'll find many lizards in Australia have a circular frill around their neck with bone spines within them, which open up and create a circular plume when they're in defense or attack mode. I think the reptilian creatures of the Nephilim may have had similar features. And it's just a wink, wink, nod, nod to reptile features. Let's keep going further down. The body, the multicoloured clothing a clown wears, the psychedelic fractal patterned polka dot clothing, that's just serpent skin. That's the pattern a serpent would have. If you look at a snake or lizards, they are so colourful and psychedelic. They are not bland.
Yes.
They're not bland creatures. Chameleons can change colour consistently, and they are the most psychedelic creatures next to birds, which again, they may have had bird-like features too. The Nephilim, they are the product of feathered, fiery serpents. What is an angel but a creature with wings like a bird? Some would say, it's I think the Nephilim would have had avian-like, reptilian-like features kind of all mashed together in this weird feathery serpent-like, multicolored, fractaled, psychedelic-looking monster thing, which is more akin to what they were in these folk traditional cultures, by the way. They dress like feathery head-dressed psychedelic creatures, you know. But the
Yeah.
clown version is like a watered-down version. So we just wear this multicolored, fractaled, silly costume, you know, and that's our nod, wink, wink to reptilian features, serpent stuff. Okay, so
My mind is like, I don't, Paul, can you even see me? My mouth is like, oh my gosh, it's just dropped open because I'm like piecing all these things together. Okay, but what about the red nose?
yes, there's many things behind that.
Okay.
I used to just think it was maybe a reference to the cannibalistic nature, the blood drinking nature of these things.
Yeah.
So originally the red mouth came hand in hand with the red nose. It was kind of like smeared blood around the mouth and on the
Blood.
nose.
Mm.
But that's too basic. I didn't like that. I was never happy with that answer.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
sounds there. No, there's something else that is too specific. The red bulbous nose is way too specific of a feature for it just to be about dipping your blood into a bit of your nose into a bit of blood. It can't just be that. So I looked into it, and if we know the Nephilim had really, really pale skin on the face, they might have had multicolored skin everywhere else, but the white face is a really common factor. With the odd pattern on there, maybe, but the white skin facial feature seems to be and I looked into it, and there's this thing called the Curse of the Celts. Okay, so really pale northern European people suffer from this the most, which is why it's called the Curse of the Celts. But it's basically extreme rosacea, to the point where you have really white skin, but you get red blotches everywhere, kind of like red polka dots if you think about it, all over your skin and on your cheeks and on your nose and on your forehead and on your face, and it's just really horribly red. You know, it's like it gets blistery, it gets that bad, you know. And it can come with other problems like having high iron in the blood and developing something called hemochromatosis. And if you have too much iron in your blood, you can get metal deposits in your major organs, and all sorts of things can happen, you know, if you don't process it properly. But it kind of comes with this Curse of the Celt thing. But one other major side effect of extreme rosacea, which only incredibly pale people get, is that your nose can start to grow and become incredibly bulbous and full of pus and bright red, like a clown nose. And it's called a rhinophyma. Look it up. It's really common. The only way to fix it is to shave it off, to cut it off surgically and resculpt the nose. So it begs the question that maybe the very old Nephilim, who have been around for a while, who have this incredibly pale skin, may have developed extreme forms of rhinophymas, which are big red bulbous noses. So I think I know that's a new discovery relatively. I discovered that a few months ago, but
I love it. I mean, I love that you're piecing it together, you know, and you're so smart. It's like you're really kind of putting these pieces together. You know, I thought of a couple things, and I want to pick your brain about this because talking about kind of social media, celebrities, like kind of Hollywood entertainment, they have something that a lot of celebrities participate in, and it's called the Red Nose Day.
Yeah.
And it's all for children.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that, where they wear the red noses? And I always thought there was something weird about that.
We have it in England every year. Yeah.
Oh,
it's,
okay.
I think it's a
Do you think that's tied in?
I think it's
to
it's
the clown?
originally a British tradition that kind of spread everywhere else, I think. But yes, I think it's a good way of getting everyday normal people to dress like a clown. And what happens when you dress? What happens when you dress like the thing? You open portals to the thing. It's a subtle way of getting the public involved in invocation rituals, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's always behind the same mask. It's for the kids. Okay.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Always.
Yeah, I mean, always. Like the Shriners, you've got the red nose.
Yeah.
You've got also, think about like Pennywise, right? It was all about stealing the children.
Yeah.
And another tie-in that I thought was really interesting was John Wayne Gacy. Have you heard of him, the serial killer, the killer clown?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Killed 33 children. You know, 33 and all the Freemasonry stuff there. I just thought that was a strange connection as well.
He was a Freemason, I believe.
Was he?
He was a member.
I knew he had ties to.
It was. I've heard stories that he had ties to it. Some people in my Telegram group have told me loads of extra stuff about him that I didn't know, and I'm pretty sure I heard that he was definitely heavily linked with the local groups, and
Yeah,
it's
the
something, it
political.
had something to
Hmm.
do with it. Yeah, absolutely. And some highly
Right.
political stuff was going on with him as well, like you said. And the fact that he
Yeah.
killed 33 people, he claimed to be God as well, and all sorts of other stuff.
Right.
But yeah, and
Right.
I've
Right.
actually found in my research, I've not made a video about it yet because I'm kind of still compiling information, but there's a lot of killers in the world who have dressed like clowns. A
Yeah. Something
surprising
to it.
amount. Yeah, yeah. There's something about it. There's one particular killer. His name escapes me right now, but maybe just describing him will bring it to mind. But he basically he murdered a woman in a motel, and even when he got arrested at first, he had his lips tattooed to be wider like a clown. He was already going
Mm.
down that route with his tattoos, very clownish. And it's been like a decade later, and he's in court again recently because he murdered his cellmate and made a necklace out of his fingers and ate part of him and did all sorts of horrible satanic stuff to his cellmate basically. And now he's in prison, obviously in the court again. And you should see the state of him now. He's even more clownish. He's included the black slits down his eyes. He's made the smile look even wider. He's just covered in satanic tattoos from head to toe, swastikas, all sorts
Right.
of things, just all over him. You know what I mean? Just pure Satanism tattooed all over his body. And he says, "Yeah, I
Mhm.
worship the devil. That's what I do." And it's interesting that the tattoo he's decided to go for is the most satanic clown looking thing you've ever seen. And the stuff
Wow.
this guy does is just awful, and he's not repentant. He's like, "I'm all
Mhm.
for it. I worship Satan."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
what
He's all
and he's
in.
like, "I'll do it again if you give me the chance." You know what I mean? He's saying this in
Right.
court. He doesn't care. And
Right.
I found, just this is another one talking about 33.
Hmm.
Just this year in Florida, a case has finally been settled about a woman was shot dead at her door 33 years ago by a clown holding balloons. She answered the door and was shot dead by a clown. And then 27 years after that, a woman was arrested on suspicion of being the murderer. This woman was now the wife of the husband who originally was shot. So, yeah, right. So this is what happened, right? They found a hair in a car which was sold off the lot of the husband of the woman who died. And it
Oh
turns
my
out
God.
people think he was having an affair with somebody, and that somebody shot the wife so they could be together
Oh my
and used one
gosh.
of his cars as a getaway vehicle and dressed like a clown to do it, to disguise herself, right? And get this, she's been in prison for 6 years, okay? And what basically has happened is she's denied it up until this point, but she's been told if you just admit guilt now, you'll get off on a suspended sentence in a year. So she's just got away with murder. Basically, she's admitted to a murder
Oh my
she
gosh.
claims she didn't actually do,
Yeah.
just so she can get out of prison earlier. She's already served 6 years. She'll only have to serve one more year now. She's admitted it in a plea deal, and she'll get out in a year. And
Oh my.
this mysterious clown murder all came to a conclusion after 33 years. I find that highly suspicious.
Yeah.
But
Isn't that?
the weird stuff like that all the time is
No
happening.
coincidences.
No, and yeah,
I know.
clowns and murders are actually a lot more common than you would
Yes.
think. They're a lot more common. Yeah, it's strange.
That is strange. I'm sure you have so many more interesting tie-ins. I mean, I wanted to touch on a few other things. I want to be just very respectful of your time, but I have you here, so I'm like, I've got to ask you some questions.
Sure, go for it.
But think about. I don't know if you look at many celebrities. I kind of found myself in a niche in that area, just kind of exposing the symbolism and stuff like that years back. But there was a recent within the last month or so, Doja Cat came out with these pictures and she was making the clown face. Like she had all the clowns. She pulled her, kind of like the Joker from
Yeah.
Batman, right? Where she pulls her mouth out and she looks like a clown.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you think about that? I mean, how does this play into like celebrities and stuff? Are they just trying to make it normalized? Are they invoking demons? What are your thoughts about that?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I actually
You do? Okay.
I've made a video about Doja Cat.
Oh, I missed that.
quite recently, well, about a month or two ago, and I think it's called something like "What Happened to You, Doja Cat? Like, what's going on? Like, why have you suddenly started covering yourself in blood on your new album cover and calling yourself the Scarlet Woman and all this sort of stuff? Like, claiming to be the
Yeah,
woman riding the beast, all these type of. She's gone highly satanic, overtly satanic in her
yeah,
symbolism. Basically, she started releasing images
yeah.
on her Instagram of her new tattoos, which were the skeleton of a bat on her back, and also the medieval hybrid human demons artwork. She's also got tattooed on her now randomly of like serpentine fish dogmen type stuff, with like faces on the knees and the elbows, and it all comes out of the medieval tradition of like demonic representation, basically. And she's getting these things tattooed on her. And then not long after that, she reveals this new album where she's basically created a new alter ego for herself called Scarlet, where she's naked and covered in blood with the alchemical symbol for water or fire on top of her with the pyramid triangle. And it's kind of like, okay, so you've sold out fully now, have you? Is that what's going
Yeah,
on?
right.
And like you said, I found all these images of her splaying her mouth open with her fingers, making a
Yeah.
jester smile with like panda eyes, and all this type of thing. And she's
Hmm.
dyed her hair green and put white makeup on her and uglified herself. She shaved all her hair off, all this type of stuff. And I
Right.
think she made a quote saying, "They made me famous," talking about demons.
Mm.
And she's okay with it. She's like, I'm going to represent them because they're the one that made me famous. So I think
Wow.
she's tacitly admitting there, I'm making myself look more like them to channel
Hmm.
them because those are the guys who made me famous, and that's how it works. She's clued into the trick. Um,
Yeah.
you dress like the thing to channel the thing, and you will be elevated in the industry if you do it. She made the choice to do that, and that's and her recent video just came out, is literally a music video of her looking like a black-skinned reptilian demon with a tail, acting like Amityville horror types, spooky
Yeah.
haunted house stuff, but whatever. What she's actually doing there is saying, yeah, I channel demons. This is in me. This is what
Right.
the spiritual and physical are one in the same. I might look like a human woman on the outside, but this is what I actually am on the inside, type of thing. This is what I allow into me to take full control. And I think one of her lyrics is something like, I said what I said. I'd rather be famous than dead. She's happy with it. She's more than
Yeah.
happy to take the fame. That's what she wants to do. And she's just basically a high priestess witch now for the secret societies, and people idolize her, and that's the point. It makes others want to
Yep.
mimic it, and now future prospective musicians in the industry will see her and think, well, that's what you need to do to get famous. So they will do it. And they will do the same
Hmm.
things, dress the same way, say the same things, and sing about the same
Yeah.
stuff. And that it's a self-perpetuating process of going further and further and further into the pit of Satanism in the music industry. It's just going to spiral more and more down. It's a slippery slope, literally, and it's just snowballing. And she's just another one. She's just another one of thousands of idols out there that do the exact same thing. But she's just very open
Definitely.
about it lately. Very open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind when you were talking. I guess you know how sometimes when people certain things, but when somebody says it really clicks together, and you're like, oh my gosh. Well, you did that for me. When you were saying how the spiritual realm needs a body, a temple, a home to operate in, to work out and kind of manifest what they want to do, right? And so when they get into, and these people are invoking these clown Nephilim spirits and other demonic entities, they are able to be worshipped through this person. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, yeah. It's basically all the
Okay.
the veneration, and imagine being on
Yeah.
stage and having millions of people screaming at you that they love
Right.
you, and that feels good not only for the person on stage but also the demon within. They live
And
vicariously through your senses.
through.
So what you
Yep.
feel, they feel. That's how it works. Okay,
Hmm.
so if you feel really good about yourself and you feel all this adulation and you feel like a god, all these
Yeah.
people worship you and you have that energy of joy going through your body, the demon is feeling that too. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If you are let's say you're a nobody, you're a junkie, you've got a demon in you who is making you take all these hard heroin drugs like meth and things, it's killing you. And it might feel really good, but it's killing you. It's not killing the demon. but they get to experience the pleasure.
Right.
That's why they do it.
Yes.
They use your body to experience the pleasures with no consequence to themselves. You're just a means to an end to them. You're a vessel to get the pleasure that they can't experience on their own. They're disembodied. They don't have senses like we do until they get into us. Once they're in us, they feel what we feel. Whatever we touch, whatever we taste, whatever we smell, everything, they feel what we feel. And they're vampires in that respect. I won't call them energetic vampires. Maybe I've heard a lot of people, new agey people, talk about loosh. That demons like to generate negative energy, and then they drain that energy out of people. And they feed off fear and all that type of stuff. And maybe we saw hints and parallels to that in something like Monsters Inc., another dimension full of demonic monsters who feed and use the energy of the screams of children to power their realm. It's kind of a hint to that. And then at the end, it's laughter, in fact, that they use to feed and fuel their energy in their world. They switch to laughter power. So that implies these demons don't really care what the energy is, as long as it's energy. And they'll feed off it. They'll experience it. I don't think it's so much it gives them power, like they try and say in the films. I think they just enjoy the sensation. That's they get off on it, in a way. And there's something to be said for a clown, because if you think about it, a clown can evoke either extreme fear or extreme laughter in an individual. You either think they're really funny or you think they're absolutely terrifying. It's one of the two. And if you consider that a demon doesn't care what energy you get, whether it's extreme laughter or extreme fear, a clown is kind of the perfect thing for somebody to be dressed as, for a demon to be channeled within, because the person dressed like a clown will go up to an individual and make that individual have extreme fear or extreme laughter. Either way, the demon gets the energy. You know what I mean? You have to think about it that way, and like clowns are synonymous with either fear or laughter. It's one of the two, and I think demons can. There's a fine line between crying and laughing, I've found. If you ever listen to a toddler who doesn't understand their emotions at all and are still trying to regulate, they can be laughing 1 second and then instantly be crying and wailing the next second, but it sounds the same. They can laugh to the point where they're crying, or they can cry and scream to the point where they start laughing. It's kind of like that they blend very quickly into one another, and I think there's something to do with that, with the energy and the vampiric nature of demons. I don't know, but to answer your question, yes, they want your body so they can experience the things that you experience. Hence why demonic possession isn't really good for a human, because they usually make you do stuff which is horrible for their own pleasure. Yeah. Like even murdering people, they might get off on killing people. And like you see a lot of murderers who are there in prison or in court, and they're like, I don't know what came over me. I don't, it's kind of like, I don't know why I killed those people. I don't know. I just did it. And it's kind of, did they really do it sometimes? You have to wonder, I'm not trying to alleviate people of the guilt for actually murdering people. That, some people are just evil as well. There is that problem. It's not, some of the demons, some people are just purely demonic on their own back as well. That does happen. It's not all just demons. But I do wonder. I do wonder sometimes.
Yeah, I do too. I'm glad you touched on that though, like with the laughter and the fear, because you're so right. I recently saw this reel, and it was a hyper-sensualized, like, in quote, deliverance ministry. But they were showing these kids rolling around on the floor laughing hysterically. And they were this person is obviously a false teacher, heretic. But he was like saying that this was the Holy Spirit. And I thought, that is not the Holy Spirit. There's nothing about that is the Holy Spirit. That's demonic. They're laughing uncontrollably, like they're possessed. Like it was insane, but it just kind of struck me because I thought, wow, like to your point, these demons don't really care. They will manifest and they will make themselves known in any way through humans. And it's up to us as Christians to have discernment, wisdom, and test the spirit, right? So we know. But kind of wrapping up, I wanted to just kind of end with hope for those that are listening. And I know it's kind of heavy stuff at times, but it also gives us insight into that other side, how the enemy operates. But what would be kind of something important that you think our listeners could glean from this? Like, why do you think Christians would want to know this?
It's a know your enemy situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to know what you're really up against and how they operate. It's be wise as serpents and harmless as doves at the end of the day. If you don't know what your enemy looks like, how do you know how do you know if you're not being deceived? You know, how do you, if they could be right there in front of you, you know, and you wouldn't even realize it if you don't know what the enemy really truly looks like in a spiritual sense. And like I said, the physical and the spiritual are one. They're not separate from each other. You know, we are spiritual beings as well as physical. We are both simultaneously, you know, and so are these Nephilim creatures. They just no longer have the physicality, but they're still here, just in spirit form, you know. And our perception of them may be closed off, which I thank God for. That, you know, and there may be idiots out there who want to open that perception back up and see them again, foolishly. But there's a reason why we're not supposed to see them anymore, because life would be a living hell, you know. And we've, and I guess, you know, for Christians out there, I mean, first of all, if you're still at that level as a Christian where you don't believe in the demonic realm, you can't afford to be like that anymore. I'm sorry, it's time to catch up. I have to say that first of all. You know, it's naive of you not to think that the spiritual world is real when most of Jesus's ministry was casting demons out. They didn't just disappear. You know, after after all of that, they're still here. It's still a problem we have to contend with. But like I said, in hope, we have the authority with the Holy Spirit and in Jesus Christ to cast them out. We have authority over them. They don't have power over us. They are a defeated enemy. That's the hope at the end of all of this, you know. As terrifying as clowns and demons are, they are weak, they are weak and pathetic and defeated and already under the authority of Jesus. They don't know. Your ignorance is what gives them power. As long as you don't know that, they can use you. And it's as simple as that, really. So know your authority in them, and they wouldn't risk it, is what I've learned. So, you know, since I got stronger in my own faith, I don't have those demonic attacks anymore. Since I dropped and repented of the addictions and those things which were holding me back from my old life, the more of my old life I shed away, and how I was being reborn as a new person in Christ, those things stopped. Because why would a demon risk it now with me when they know what I can do? They wouldn't bother, you know, and that's how that's how you need to protect yourself. They prey on the weak and the ignorant. And, you know, as a Christian, you can't afford to be ignorant. This is a spiritual battle. This is a war. You're in the middle of a war. We need to remember that. Like, it's not like put on the full armor of God, you know what I mean? That know the word. And at the end of the day, that means knowing who your enemy is as well. And it's knowing how they operate. It's naive. We can't really afford to be naive anymore. We can't. The information's kind of there now. You know, we can know these things. And in today's day and age, with how insane everything truly is becoming, how clown world everything truly is becoming, it's kind of like I think we do need to be a little bit more aware of what a clown means. Simple stuff when you think about it. It's stuff we've always took for granted, you know. But the world it's a world of symbols. You know, we are being controlled by symbols at the end of the day. Our enemy uses symbols against us. That's how they do it. And it's smoke and mirrors. It's a magic trick. If we can get them believing this, then we can also manipulate them by doing this over here. It's while they're looking over here, we're doing the trick over here type of stuff. You know, and as long as they can get us believing, you know, just on my topic, for example, clowns are just harmless fun for the kids, then they can openly channel demons in front of you and bring them into the world through rituals, and you wouldn't realize it. Like the Red Nose Day stuff, for example.
Yep.
You're told it's just a bit of fun, harmless for the kids, but it's not. It's a symbol. You're putting on a ritualistic dress. You're taking part in an invocation ritual, and this is a well understood practice to every other ancient culture on the planet, you know, on the earth. That's you know, I've got to be careful with my language there because I know I can piss a lot of people off. But I'm just saying, you know, it's well established. So I guess that's all I can say. You know, they are a defeated enemy, but you've got to know your enemy. Otherwise, you're defenseless. You're defenseless. That's all I can say. Like you might, And at the end of the day, though, if you're ever caught off guard, just call on Jesus Christ and cast them out in authority. Put your foot down.
Amen.
Put your foot down and have faith, you know, and you can be saved in that respect, and you'll be okay. But
Yeah.
I guess that's all I can say.
That's so good. That is really good. I'm like really surprised at pleasantly surprised at just how much your faith has kind of grown since your journey in this. And it was really refreshing to hear your testimony and just how you kind of went from one world to another, and then adding in the whole clown aspect. I mean, if I didn't hate clowns before and was freaked out with them, I'm definitely now. I
Yeah.
want nothing to do with clowns. But Paul, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all the research you've done. You're very well researched, and I just appreciate your testimony too. So thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Sure thing. You've
Alrighty.
got my email. Just let me know if you want to do this again.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.